I invite you to all now just please close your eyes or just find a spot somewhere to just soften your gaze and just make an agreement with yourself to be here, to be right here, right now, in this present moment, in this present beautiful moment. Just allowing your breath to flow, hearing the sounds outside, whether they're of nature or cars passing by, birds singing, because it's right here and right now in this moment. Knowing that each breath you take is a cleansing breath, revitalizing and bringing oxygen to every cell in your body. And I ask you now to just think about your memories for a moment and visualize a time in your life that was full of celebration. Perhaps it was the birth of a child, a marriage, a commitment, adopting a new pet. Whatever it was, just allow yourself to see that memory in your mind right now. Now allow yourself to step into that memory, to become a part of that memory, that celebration, that wonderful feeling of that moment. Imagining everything that was going on at that moment, the laughter, the sounds, and the joy that you felt. Allowing those feelings to just wash completely over you, to penetrate every cell of your body, just feeling that wonderful moment of joy. And we're going to spend a few moments in the silence this morning. And while we're in that silence, I ask that you just allow yourself to just bask in those joyful feelings of that moment. Just allow yourself to feel it, to see it, just to be a part of it as we move into our moment of silence. now I ask for you to start to bring your focus back to this present moment. But as you do, I invite you to bring those feelings of joy back to this present moment with you. The joy you felt at that time, absorb it and bring it back into this present moment. Allow yourself to feel it right here and right now as you sit in your chair or perhaps lay on your floor at your home, wherever you are. Just allow yourself to feel it right here and right now. Understanding that the joys and the delights we experience in life aren't confined to one particular moment. They're always within us, as a part of us. Something that we can reach into and experience each moment as we navigate through this journey of life. Know that that is within you. And you can go back to that each and every moment. And so it is. Namaste. To our Unity Jazz Band, y'all were on fire this morning. That was good. Yeah, that's fine. All right. So Josie wanted to let me know while she was in her fit of laughter up here during the announcements that she missed a couple of things. There also, one thing we have on the calendar, check our Unity calendar on our website. It's unityofmadison.org, and just go to our calendar. And believe it's UW, the university that's sponsoring this, but it's the Nelson Institute for Environmental Studies, and they've got just an online an online event that you may be interested in attending. So see our calendar to sign up for that. And of course, our calendar is where you'll find most of our activities, our e-news. If you haven't signed up for our e-news and you would like to, it's in this tiny little spot on the website. If you go to unityofmadison.org, go down to the very bottom and you'll see where you can sign up for our e-news. So do that and you will be probably pretty much up to date on everything we have going on. So now I'm Reverend Evin Wilkins, for anybody I have not met yet. So welcome everybody here that I haven't met and everybody who is tuning in online. And I just want to say, following up on the celebration song, it is truly a celebration today, isn't it? Yes. We've got Ann back with us. She was released from her rehab yesterday, so welcome back, Ann. Tyrone and Sue have a new grandson. And I just know everybody in here has something to celebrate, right? Whether it's getting out of the house, just something. We've all got something to celebrate. Even just waking up this morning and just being able to hear the birds outside. We've all got something in our lives to celebrate. But one thing I was thinking about, when I was getting ready for my talk was, I was thinking about, remember when you were a child and there was something right around the corner, like maybe it was your birthday or it was Christmas. There was something right around the corner that was really exciting. And you were just, this big exciting event was coming up and you were just so excited to be able to take part in this. There was going to be maybe cake, ice cream, gifts, whatever was Santa Claus. Whatever it was, the last day of school, that was always a favorite of mine, the last day of school. Too bad we don't get those anymore as an adult. But hey, maybe we could work something out as adults to get that. But maybe there's another celebratory time in your life, that you look back on, or that you still celebrate even now. Some reason to have a party or just to celebrate. And of course we can still have these moments as adults, but I don't think we have them enough. Who in here thinks that we celebrate too much? If you do, I want to see your hand. Or online, you could raise your hand online because I wouldn't see you, but I would feel it, trust me. But, I've heard people lots of times tell me as adults, how, oh, Christmas and birthdays are for kids. Or, reminisce about the time I was a child. I was able to look forward to Christmas. Or whatever the occasion was. But why can't we still do that as an adult? And not with just these events, but just with our daily lives in general. Why can't we just live in this celebratory way or just look at life as a celebration as a whole? Sometimes I think we tend to look for the worst case scenarios, about things that we tend to dread. Sometimes our minds just go to those a little too often. Like, I've got another meeting I've got to go to this week. Or if I have to sit through one more church talk by that boring Reverend Evin. No hands raised, please. But whatever the case may be, right? So there's something I'd like to talk about today, and I came across a Sanskrit word that was really fitting, and it's called Utsava. And I think there are other slight variations in the word, but it appears to mean the same thing. According to Wikipedia, Utsava means a festival or celebration or any joyous occasion. It also carries the meaning of delight, merriment, and pleasure. So what I want to do today is focus on the delight and the merriment portions of the word. And I'm thinking we really need to look into this Utsava thing and maybe just incorporate it a little bit more into our lives. Is everybody game for that today? All right. So right now I'm going to give everybody just a moment to just shout out a word that brings you joy. It can be anything. Maybe it's grandson or birthday, but let's just all shout them out on the count of 3, all right? Just first thing that comes to mind, something that brings you pleasure. I'd ask for the people at home to please participate as well. All right, I'm going to count to 3. You ready? 1, 2, 3. Dogs. All right. See, we've already started. We've already got it going on. But there are a few things that Utsava, this word of delight and merriment, can do for our lives. And that's what I want to talk a little bit about today. One is that it lifts our consciousness, right? When we are in this celebratory frame of mind, we begin to lift our consciousness. And when we lift our consciousness, we start to feed into the collective consciousness as a whole, don't we? So let's think about this for a moment. Let's think about you just wake up one morning and you're really in a really good mood. No particular reason, you're just in a really good mood. Or maybe there's a celebration that's going to take place. Maybe you're getting a raise that day. Maybe you're getting to see your grandchildren. Whatever the case is, you're in a good mood. You feel as if you're on the top of the world and there's nothing out there that's going to get you down. When suddenly you run into somebody. Maybe it's your manager, a friend, a neighbor, a family member, whatever it is, and they're in a really cruddy mood that day. This person obviously woke up feeling just a little bit differently than you did that morning, but suddenly you feel your mood kind of start to slip a little bit and it starts to match theirs. Or maybe the opposite happens. Maybe their mood's starting to raise just a little bit to fit yours. I kind of like that scenario a little bit better. But that is feeding into the collective consciousness. So now you two, say you're both just really happy and your moods are matching and you go out to the public. People that you talk to or come in contact with, they're going to start to feel that too because it's going to also seep into their collective consciousness and everybody that they come in contact with. And that's how it works. It spreads. And that's something we want to spread though, right? That we don't have to wear masks for that. But that's for that's an example of the collective consciousness. And it works for more than just mood. It also works for beliefs and all kinds of different things. So when we choose to live from this place of Utsava, of delight, can you imagine the difference it would begin to make in our daily life experience? So let's talk about the how now, because the how part's kind of important too, right? So one of my favorite quotes is actually a quote by Mark Twain, when he said, "Some of the worst things in my life never happened." So to me, this lets me know that some of the worst things in my life aren't even happening in the physical world. But where does that mean that they're happening? Yeah, right inside of here. Yep, they're happening right inside of here. And I'm not saying that they're all, sometimes they're not even the worst things in our lives happening in our minds. Sometimes they're awesome things too, right? When I was a kid, I always had these fantasies of flying like Superman, so that was a good thing that was happening in my mind. But imagination is one of our Unity 12 powers. And imagination is found right here. It's in the third eye chakra. So as such, some of the best manifestations and some of the things that we do start to see in our lives derive from right here, where imagination lives. But some of what I also like, my own little term, I've come up with my own little fancy term here, called junk thoughts. But sometimes those can kind of clog it up just a little bit. Some of the imagined worst things in our lives. I'm thinking some of those thoughts can interfere just a little bit. Some of the junk thoughts, if we allow them to, can kind of interfere a little bit with some of the delightful things in life, don't you think? If we allow those to kind of take precedence. So I began to think of an acronym that I used to hear a lot when I was working in the corporate world, and it's called KISS, K-I-S-S, Keep It Super Simple. There was another derivative of it, but we're not going to use that. We're going to call it Keep It Super Simple. I can tell which ones of you are familiar with it, but we're not going to use that. Keep it super simple. But one thing that came to my mind here was, remember the show The Wizard of Oz? I'm sure everybody in here has at least heard of The Wizard of Oz. We do have some really young folks out here, but I'm sure you've heard of The Wizard of Oz, right? There's this whole complicated thing going on in that show. They're on this journey to visit this grand wizard that's going to give them everything they seek in life, right? Courage, intelligence, a heart, getting home. They're all seeking these things. Only to discover that the guy behind this whole giant facade known as Oz is, he's there and he turns out to not be what they were expecting. Somebody eventually tells them, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. And why is that? It's because they had those powers, those things that they seek within themselves all along. They already had, a heart, intelligence, courage. Dorothy had the power to get home the entire time, the entire way along their journey. They just had to become aware of that fact. They had to learn to pay no attention to the man behind the curtain and instead pay attention to themselves. So one of the ways in which we can do this is to just practice keeping it simple. Now, I've often thought that the excitements we often felt as children were sometimes just due to the simplicity of it all. We seldom ever question the mechanics of Santa Claus, right? We seldom ever say, there's this one guy who's delivering toys all over the world. We never contemplated how that was happening. We just knew it was. It was just the magic of the moment. We never thought about how we were growing older with each birthday. About how our childhood was getting closer to coming to an end, and we're starting to transform into adulthood and all of the responsibilities that come with such a task. We kept it simple. We enjoyed the delight and the moment and the festivity of it all. And I remember, back to corporate, I remember sitting in corporate meetings. Lots of times an agenda would go out, and the agenda looked really straightforward. Somebody had an idea, and they were going to present this really simple solution to make our corporate lives easier. The meeting would be scheduled for an hour, and I remember thinking to myself, that agenda looks so simple, we may not even be there 30 minutes. But then I'd find myself sitting there an hour and a half later. Anybody that's been in the corporate world knows this. Probably just meetings in general, I would think. But the simple solution had been thrown out the window, throwing wrenches into it here and there, seeming to deliberately make the solution much more difficult than it had to be, right? I'd watch people argue for what seemed to be sometimes just the sake of argument, only to find that we would circle right back around to the most simplest of the solutions, the one that was initially mentioned in the agenda. And I never could understand why. Why can't we just keep it simple? So in the book, The Shambhala Principle, author and head of the Shambhala organization, Sokyung Mifun, if I'm pronouncing that right, he tells us, when we are overwhelmed by complication, we sometimes throw in the towel and give up on the whole endeavor. He goes on to say, in hindsight, had we been a bit more patient or generous, or applied a bit more exertion, Success was at hand. So let's go back to the Wizard of Oz for a moment. What if they'd stopped early on in their journey of the yellow brick road? They're like, oh, that road is too yellow, it seems too long, whatever, I'm just going to stop. Just before arriving at the gates of the supposed Great Oz. It took some patience, I would imagine, and I'd say a little bit of exertion. But they seemed to keep it super simple. Because when you look at it, all they really did was merely just place one foot in front of the other. It was really all that they did. They put one foot in front of the other. And I'd also like to think that their confidence increased just a little bit with each step, because they knew at that time, or thought at that time, that they were getting a little bit closer to what it was that they wanted. They were becoming also aware of the perils along the journey, yet they continued to prevail through each peril, right? And with each one they encountered, they grew more and more confident. And it's really the same for any of us. And we don't even have to be traveling down the yellow brick road. We can just practice it throughout the course of our own daily lives at any given moment. Simply by placing one foot in front of the other. Just saying, hey, you know what, this feels really tough, but I'm going to allow myself another day. I'm going to allow myself another hour to work through it before giving up. Then that hour or that day arrives, and we make that agreement with ourselves over again. I'm going to give it more time. I'm going to continue to give it more time. And with each step, we practice patience. And we practice utilizing the understanding that we don't give up, that we aren't giving up. And each moment that we don't give up, we're going to find that our confidence grows. Our understanding grows. And perhaps we begin to realize and to know that we already have what we seek. And that we've had it inside ourselves all along. And that we're starting to remember that. And with that, we can begin to bask in Utsava. We can begin to savor delights that we don't have to save up just for certain moments or certain events to celebrate. Delights that we can experience at any time, no matter our age, no matter where we are in life. There's yet another way I want to mention that I think can help us to feel and to practice more Utsava in our lives. A Japanese samurai poem once stated, "I make my mind my friend." And this is perhaps one of the greatest pieces of advice that we can practice at any given time, is making our mind our friend. So remember those junk thoughts that I talked about earlier? What if we approached them a little bit differently? What if we chose to not view them as junk thoughts? Lots of times when we experience thoughts that make us feel frightened or afraid, or even unsure of ourselves, we just want them to leave, right? They don't feel comfortable. They don't feel good. We just want them to leave. We want them to go away so we can, again, think those pleasant thoughts and just bask in those pleasant thoughts. But what if we take what we initially saw as junk thoughts, those that are happening perhaps in our mind in this worst case scenario, and what if we instead made them our friend? So as we know, there was no internet or television in earlier centuries. People didn't get instantaneous warnings of things the way that we do. Right now it's just all at our fingertips. They relied on messengers that were running through the streets or riding through the streets on horseback, letting people know that something was coming, that there was something to prepare for. We've probably all heard the story of Paul Revere. The messengers let people know that something was coming. It's coming, you need to prepare. And we wouldn't ignore a friend. I would hope not. You likely wouldn't ignore a friend that called you up and said, hey, I see a tornado heading directly to your house. You need to take cover. If you're like me, you would throw the phone up in the air and run for cover. Or maybe, I'm from Texas and we have tornadoes all the time there, but still. So let's think about our mind for just a moment. What if we were to make friends with it and view it as a means to enlightenment? In the Shambhala principle, he also tells us to enlighten means to fully illuminate. We see the problem and we find a solution. In this way, being unaware of the problem is not being enlightened, but being ignorant. Even on a personal level, when we have predicaments in our life, the answer is already there. We just need to be open to it. So perhaps the notion of making our mind our friend isn't the worst advice we could receive, right? Maybe some of those junk thoughts aren't even really junk at all. Maybe they're there to help us see what we need to work on or even to work through. Maybe it would help us to pay attention to some of those things and to just think, okay, why are you here? Address those thoughts in your mind. Why is it that you're here? What is it that you are trying to tell me? Then make the decision as to whether or not it really is the worst case scenario that will never happen, or maybe something a little bit more legit. Something that maybe needs to be sorted out a little bit, or something that needs your attention. Of course, the how to decipher lies within our spiritual tools and our practices, prayer, meditation, and just becoming really aware with what keeps rising in your mind. So making friends with our mind can help us to feel that Utsava, to embrace and to celebrate the delight of life and all that life can truly offer. So you see, back to birthdays and Christmas and those other joyous occasions, those aren't something that we must just leave behind to be celebrated in childhood. Experience and delight doesn't only come around during special occasions, or does it have to only come around during special occasions or once in a blue moon. We can experience Utsava at any time we choose. We could do it right now if we wanted to. We need to only open our eyes and to see the good in our lives. Practice our principles. Be willing. And when we do, we will see that life is Utsava. It's not something to be sought or practiced. It's what life is. It is a delight and a joy. It's something to be celebrated. So I say we light the candles. I say we make a wish. And I say we celebrate. Namaste. All right, the jazz band is going to give us more music here in just a moment, but right before they do, I'm going to invite Steve Roberts, our board president, up. He's got something he would like to let the congregation know, and so I will hand it over.